Welcome, everyone, to the January 26th webinar, Benchmarking 101 for Buildings 10,000 to 50,000 square feet. My name is Julia Field, and I work for the district's Department of Energy and Environment. This webinar is being recorded, and the slides and the recording will be posted to our website after the event. Everyone has been muted upon entry and will stay muted throughout the session. If you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them into the Q&A section and make sure you send them to all panelists. I'm joined by my colleagues, Joanna Saunders and Katie Bergfield, who will help me throughout the presentation. So the learning objectives of today's webinar are for the attendees to understand energy benchmarking and its importance, to know when your building is required to report benchmarking data and understand the option to voluntarily report your data, and finally, to practice adding a property, its use details, and entering energy and water meter data into Portfolio Manager. To start things off, I'm going to pass this over to Joanna Saunders, who will walk us through the Sustainable DC vision.
Thank you, Julia. Hi, everyone. My name is Joanna Saunders, and as Julia mentioned, I work for the District Department of Energy and Environment and manage the Energy Benchmarking Program. So I want to just quickly provide a little bit of context as to how benchmarking fits into the district's larger sustainability goals. So if you're not already aware, the District of Columbia has a vision. It's called Sustainable DC, and that vision is to make DC the healthiest, greenest, most livable city in the country. This plan was originally launched in 2013, and an updated plan was released in 2019. And the updates to the plan were to expand the equity focus of Sustainable DC, get new people involved in the shaping of the goals of Sustainable DC, and also to increase its quantitative rigor. Next slide. So Sustainable DC and the re-released plan Sustainable DC 2.0 is essentially the overarching plan of the District of Columbia that commits our city to carbon neutrality by 2050. And within Sustainable DC, there are a few other plans nestled within it. The first one is Climate Ready DC, which focuses on climate adaptation. So this is recognizing that climate change is already happening and we're already feeling the effects. How can we readily adapt to those expected impacts? And then Clean Energy DC focuses more on climate change mitigation. So how do we actually reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, reduce our energy consumption, and transition to more renewable sources? Next slide. And so Clean Energy DC is where energy benchmarking specifically fits in. So the Clean Energy DC plan and the Clean Energy DC Omnibus Amendment Act of 2018 focuses on both new and existing buildings with a number of lofty goals, including adopting net zero energy building codes, improving the performance of existing buildings by implementing a building energy performance standard, and requiring the transition to 100% renewable electricity by 2032, with 10% from local solar by 2041. And so this is where energy benchmarking comes in. Buildings account for 75% of the district's total greenhouse gas emissions, which means that that is the biggest sector that we need to focus on if we're ever able to hit these big goals that our city has set. So the benchmarking law has been in effect for quite a while, but the Clean Energy DC Amendment Act of 2018 includes smaller buildings to be covered by that law, which is the whole focus of this webinar.
Great. Thank you, Joanna. So just some benchmarking basics. Broadly, energy benchmarking means tracking a building's energy and water use and using a standard metric to compare the building's performance against its own past performance and to its peers nationwide. So benchmarking helps owners to understand their building's energy use, and it helps DOEE plan how to reduce district-level building energy use. And it's often believed to drive market transformation. So in a similar way to choosing a car based on its fuel efficiency or food based on nutrition facts or nutrition label, having more information about your energy performance in a building might increase a tenant or a building to decide where to lease or purchase a building based on that energy performance. And so benchmarking in DC began with the Clean and Affordable Energy Act of 2008, which requires all private buildings greater than 50,000 square feet to report their annual energy and water use. So reporting is due each year on April 1st, and all reporting is done through the US EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is an online tool used to track your water and energy performance. Failure to meet the reporting requirements results in a fine of up to $100 a day for every day that building is not in compliance. And compliance means submitting a complete and accurate report, not just submitting your report. And the Clean Energy DC Omnibus Act of 2018 established the requirement to lower the benchmarking size threshold. So in 2022, buildings that are 25,000 to 50,000 square feet will be required to report for the first time, and they'll be reporting their 2021 calendar year data. And in 2025, buildings that are 10,000 to 25,000 square feet are required to report their data for the first time using their calendar year 2024 data. And DOEE is encouraging buildings that are 10,000 to 50,000 square feet to voluntarily benchmark their buildings before the required reporting year. And this is so that you become accustomed to the process. DOEE and the DC Sustainable Energy Utility will offer one-on-one benchmarking support as an incentive to those who voluntarily report early. And a quick poll. We're going to try out this new feature for us. So I've opened up a poll. If you look to your Q&A panel in the WebEx feature, you should see a polling option. If you could please open up that polling panel. And we have a question. Before today, did you know that DC was going to require buildings 10,000 to 50,000 square feet to report their benchmarking data? And please select yes, no, or perhaps you did not know what benchmarking was until today. So again, before today, did you know that DC was going to require buildings 10,000 to 50,000 square feet to report their benchmarking data? We'll close it in just a few seconds here. Great. Thanks to all who participated. It looks like the majority of you did know about this change. If you didn't, unfortunately, everyone knew what energy benchmarking was. Okay. So benchmarking informs our BEPS program. The Clean Energy DC Omnibus Amendment Act of 2018 requires the establishment of a Building Energy Performance Standard, or BEPS, that sets a minimum threshold for energy performance that will be no lower than the local median Energy Star score by property type or an equivalent metric. And district benchmarking data is used to set the BEPS and create baseline and performance periods for buildings entering a compliance cycle. It also established the third-party data verification requirement, which will begin with the calendar year 2023 data and will be required every 3 years. So you see in the table below that if you're reporting your benchmarking report for the first time, if you're the 25,000 to 50,000 square feet in 2022, you will have to verify your 2024 report. And then if you're reporting for the first time in 2025, you're a 10,000 to 25,000 square foot building, you will have to verify your 2027 report. As the benchmarking requirements ratchet down in square footage over time, the buildings will be required to meet the BEPS in the following periods. And BEPS periods are every 6 years. So for those benchmarking 25,000 square feet and above, you'll enter the BEPS 2 cycle. And for those that are 10,000 to 25,000 square feet, you'll be entering the third BEPS cycle. And here we have a second poll question that I'm going to open up. So again, go back to that polling panel. And this question asks, what will make benchmarking your building difficult? And you can select all that apply. So perhaps you feel that your staff capacity might be too low to cover the benchmarking requirements, limited resources to hire a contractor, not enough training, difficulty obtaining meter information, no anticipated difficulty benchmarking, or other. And we'll wait just a few seconds here. So again, if you could go and open that polling panel and find the question there and select one of the responses, or as many as you'd like, we would appreciate the feedback. So what will make benchmarking your building difficult? And we'll wait just a few more seconds here. Great. And it looks like there's some concerns over staff capacity or perhaps training. So that's good for us to know. Great, so this slide gives an overview of the basic steps necessary for setting up your benchmarking report. I'll be going through these steps during the live demonstration, but it is here for your reference when the slides become available after the webinar concludes. And so the very first step is to create an account in Portfolio.
To create a Portfolio Manager profile or use an existing one, you would log in at energystar.gov/portfolio manager. You'd come to a page that looks like this. And here you can register now if you need to create an account or log into an existing account. I have an account already, so I'll log into that. Now, Portfolio Manager's navigation is relatively intuitive. It uses a tab structure to make it easy to find your way around the tool. Here you'll see all the buildings that you have in your portfolio. If you click on sharing, you can edit who has access to your account. In reporting, here you can look up various calculations and metrics and scorecards. Going back to my portfolio will always take you back to this main landing page. And up at the top, if you click on the help button, you'll be taken to a page that has FAQs, the glossary, or you can sign up to take a training. And you can also look up at the very top to edit your account settings. To manually enter a property, you would select Add a Property. Here, you would choose what the main property type is. So that's the main purpose that your property serves. Today, I'll be benchmarking a multi-family housing building. So it's an apartment building. And I'll look it up here under lodging and residential, you'll see it, multi-family housing. And that's where you would select whatever the main purpose of your building is. So it could be office, worship facility, hospital, etc. Now the number of buildings on your property is the next question. And unless you're benchmarking a university campus, you would select one building. And then the next question is the construction status of your building. And DC only requires existing buildings to benchmark, so you would select existing and say get started. This page asks for just the basic property information. So it's going to ask for the name of your property. Mine is the DC Apartments. Next, the country, obviously United States. We're going to say my building is located on 101 Efficiency Street Northeast in Washington, DC. And the postal code. Next, to ask for the year built. Mine was 1980. And then ask for the gross floor area. This is an important metric because it's a crucial one in calculating any energy performance metric. If you see any blue text, that means it's hyperlinked. And if you float over it, you'll see this floating text box. So here it gives you the basic definition of gross floor area per Portfolio Manager's definition. You could also click on it and it'd open up in a separate tab. So you could read more about what to include or not include in your gross floor area measurements. For Portfolio Manager, the gross floor area is the total property floor area measured from the principal exterior surfaces of the building, and you should not include parking. The next question is about irrigated area, and that's just specific to multifamily housing, and it is the outdoor area that is regularly supplied water, and it's used in calculating the water score. In this multifamily housing complex, let's say there's a 1,000 square foot courtyard area. And once I put in a value, you'll see that the default value unchecked, and you want to make sure that you don't have a check in this box because that'll cause a data quality flag and it'll result in an incomplete report. The next question is about occupancy. and that's the percentage of your property's gross floor area that is occupied and operational. So we'll select 100, because mine is 100% occupied. Next is the standard IDs, and this is really important and specific to DC benchmarking. So you'll select the drop-down, and then you'll look for the District of Columbia Real Property Unique ID. This is the number that uniquely identifies your building in the district's records. It is the square suffix lot number from your District of Columbia property tax records. For condominiums, it is the square suffix regime number. And you can find your District of Columbia Real Property Unique ID in the DOEE's published covered building list, or from the Office of Tax and Revenue's online database, which we'll look up right now. If you go to mytax.dc.gov, it'll take you to a landing page that looks like this. You'll want to look for the box that says Real Property and look for their Search Real Property by Address or SSL option. Here we'll type in the address. Now, the address for my building is made up, it's fake, so we'll look up the SSL for the DOEE office building. And here you see in that first column the SSL. So again, verify this is my address and this is the SSL. So that's also the District of Columbia Real Property Unique ID. So 0672 0856. And then the final box asks if any of these special use types apply. And the first one is about parking areas. And so it asks, does the property's energy consumption include parking areas? And mine does. Next, it asks about heated swimming pool, retail stores, restaurants or cafeterias, or nursing or assisted care units. And none of these apply to my property. So I select continue. Next, you'll be asked to provide more details for your primary property use type. And so some of these will change depending on the property type that you've selected. So the ones I'll be going through today are specific to the multifamily property type. Now here you'll see on the left column, these are the property use details they ask for. Any of the use details that have this blue star means it's a required field because it's used to calculate the energy performance metrics. The ones without the star are optional and you can report it if you have the information. Obviously the next column is where you enter the value. And then the current as of, usually you'll put in the date it was built, or perhaps you'll change the date if a property use detail is current as of a renovation to the building. And the last column is the temporary value. And it's just asking if these are temporary values, which everything we're reporting is real and accurate data, so we will not be checking any of those boxes. And it's important that we don't, because that would, again, result in an incomplete report. So it already populated the gross floor area from the previous page. Next, it asks for the total number of residential living units or apartment units, and my building has 40. The next three ask if these 40 units are part of a low-rise building, a mid-rise building, or a high-rise building. And my entire apartment building is 5 stories, so I would put all 40 units in those 5 stories in the mid-rise section, but then I need to put 0 for the low and high-rise. You need to put in some number. Next, it asks for the total number of bedrooms, and mine is 60 across all units, and you have to remember that studios count as a 1-bedroom. Now, the next portion is just voluntary information that we don't need to, that you're not required to report for this particular use type. The second section is for parking, and so it asks, is this an open parking lot? It's not. Is it a partially enclosed parking garage? And it's not. And then is it a completely enclosed parking garage? It is, so I put all my square footage there, and it's a 3,000, tiny little parking garage, 3,000 square foot. And then supplemental heating, there is none, so I put no. Then I select add a property, or add property. And so now the basic information is all set. You'll see that there's the second tier of tabs now that are specific to this property. The summary page will show you the main energy metrics. The details page will show you everything that you just filled out. And then if you select the energy tab, this is where we'll add the energy meters. So what you'll do is you'll say add a meter. Here you'll select the energy that's at this property. So electric, purchased from the grid, just 1 meter. This building is master metered. And then natural gas, same thing. There's just 1 meter for the property. Then you'll go down and say get started. Now these ask for more details for these meters. You'll just select anywhere in the table to edit it. And we want to change the units for the natural gas. DOEE requires you to report therms. And then you'll add the date the meter became active. This is either the date the meter was installed, often when the building was built, or the first date of that billing cycle for the year you're reporting. I'm going to do that. So it's the 1st of January for 2020, and I'm reporting for 2020 data. Next, you'll put in kilowatt hours as the units for electricity. And again, the date that the meter became active or the date that you're first reporting a bill. I'll say create meters. And now I'm ready to start adding information for both these meters. Now, to quick explain, the main natural gas utility in DC is Washington Gas. We want to pull up an example of one of their bills. So this is usually a 2-page bill. And on the second page on the far right, you would often see your charges up at the top. And so you see the meter number, the dates of that meter reading, and then the amount that you are billed. So here you see 24 CCF is what they report, but we want to report therms in our Portfolio Manager. And therms are calculated by taking that CCF number and a conversion factor. And so that totals 24.8. So you want to make sure that you're pulling this 24.8 therms rather than the total CCF that they report above it. Now I've already gathered all of my metered information in a spreadsheet. So here we see the gas readings. And so for that first bill, I'll want to cross-check that with the amount of therms used. What you'll do going back to the Portfolio Manager is say click to add an entry. The first date of that billing cycle is the 1st of January. Select tab, it'll automatically populate the end date, and it's correctly estimating that it's about 31 days later, so it's looking at the 1st of February. And here I'll put in the therms, so 4,473. And now if you go down and look for the option add another entry from these 3 options here, it'll automatically populate start and end dates. And then all you have to do is copy and paste the therms that you have in your spreadsheet, that you have from the bills in front of you, if that's what you're working with. So all you do is you keep selecting entry, go and copy and paste the therms that you have in the spreadsheet. Great, and then we have all 12 months reported here. Now it's important to note that in order to generate accurate metrics, you need at least 12 consecutive months of data for all fuels consumed in the building. So for the most accurate metrics, be sure to enter the start and end dates exactly as they are on your utility bill. If the start and end dates fell in the middle of a month, mine started at the beginning, so that was easy, but if it's the middle of the month, you need to enter at least 13 to 14 billing periods in order to get a complete 12 calendar months of data. And these bills must span January 1st through December 31st, because otherwise Portfolio Manager will not be able to calculate the necessary metrics for that particular reporting year. So now natural gas is all set up. If you look for the electric grid meter bar and you push the little triangle they have there, it'll open up kind of a drop-down option. And here we'll enter the electric information. Pepco is the primary electric utility in DC. So let's look at a bill that they have, an example bill. And here you'll see, usually on the second page of your bill, the meter number, the start and end dates of that meter reading, and then the total use reported. So that's 675 kilowatt hours. And that's what you would report to in Portfolio Manager. Now again, I already have all this information in a spreadsheet, but rather than copying and pasting like I did for natural gas, I'm going to show you how you can upload data in bulk. So what you would do is you would download the single meter spreadsheet from Portfolio Manager, and you'd fill it out with your information. It would look something like this. It'll ask for the start and end dates, for the usage, and then it'll ask, is this an estimation? And we're reporting real data, so it is not an estimation. I'll save this spreadsheet as an Excel spreadsheet. And then I will look for it in my files, and I will select upload. And now I see all the information that was in my spreadsheet has been uploaded directly into Portfolio Manager. So this is a little bit more difficult to do than the copying pasting, but it's a lot easier in terms of the actual time required. I'll select continue. And here it asks which meters to include in the metrics. And I want both my natural gas and my electric meter included. And it asks what these meters represent. And they account for the total energy consumption for my apartment building. I'll say apply selections. And then my energy is all set. And here you see a little graph that shows the usage over time. It's important to note that you'll possibly need to collect some property use details and meter data from your non-residential tenants if your building is not master metered. You cannot collect energy data directly from residential tenants. But if you do have 5 or more electric or 5 or more natural gas user accounts, you can receive aggregated whole building consumption data from Pepco and Washington Gas through online tools that they provide. DOEE has a recorded webinar on how to connect your Portfolio Manager account to Pepco and Washington Gas aggregate meter accounts. So I'd recommend that you look at that training. Next, we'll enter the water meter information. So you'll go to the water tab and you'll say add a meter. So it's similar to before. We'll select the municipally supplied water. It's mixed indoor-outdoor because remember I have that one small courtyard outside. And then I'll say get started. Again, you'll click to edit within the table, and I want to report gallons, and the date the meter became active, again, will just be the first date that I'm reporting, 1st of February, or January. Now let's quick pull up the DC water utilities, DC Water. If you go to the first page of your bill, you'll see at the very top the meter number, the date of the meter reading, and then the usage reported in CCF or gallons. And remember, we're reporting gallons, so you'd look for that number there, and that's what you would copy into Portfolio Manager. Similar to the electric grid meter, I just think it's a lot easier to use a spreadsheet to upload directly. So I've already copied and pasted my meter reading information into the spreadsheet template Portfolio Manager provided me. I saved it as an Excel spreadsheet and I choose to upload it here. So you'll select upload, make sure everything looks right, which it does, and I will say continue. Here it asks me to select which meters to include in my metrics, and I just want that one meter that I have, and this accounts for the total water consumption for the building. I'll apply selections, and here I can see my water information. Waste and materials is not something that you're required to report to DOEE. It's not something we track. And the goals tab is a useful tab if you're wanting to try to see how your energy efficiency can be improved or how you can try to set a goal to meet an energy efficiency goal over time. Going back to the summary tab, we now see that we have an Energy Star score of 31 and other energy metrics have been calculated in this metric summary. And so starting with the Energy Star score, this is a measure of how well my property is doing relative to similar properties when normalized for climate and operational characteristics. So the score is a 31, which is not great. A score of 1 is a building that's very energy inefficient, and a score of 100 is a building that is very energy efficient. So I might start thinking of ways to improve the energy efficiency of my building, and it's a good thing that I'm voluntarily reporting my data before it's required. While I'm not yet to meet the building energy, or while I'm not yet subject to meet the energy performance standard for this building, I will be required to meet an energy performance standard in the second BEPS period, and I want to start working to improve my energy efficiency before then. The source energy use intensity, which you can see reported in the second row, is the total amount of raw fuel that is required to operate your property divided by the property's gross floor area. And that's just another energy performance metric that's one of the more important ones to know and to check. And that's it. My property is now set up in Portfolio Manager.
So now that I have benchmarked my property in Portfolio Manager, I have to submit the report to DOEE, and we accept benchmarking reports through Portfolio Manager Web Services. And this requires just a one-time property share with the district, after which annual submission of the benchmarking report becomes automatic. You will need to update your energy and water use information before the reporting deadline of April 1st each year. With automatic reporting, DOEE can view and download data from your property, but we do not have the ability to edit, add, or delete any of your data. And as Katie mentioned earlier, if you were to enter any cost information, that is something we'll be able to see in Portfolio Manager, but we do not collect, download, or disclose any financial information. So if you're looking for more training, we highly recommend all of the trainings available through Portfolio Manager. Their 101 is similar to what we just walked through, but it goes even more in depth into using their tool. And there's a couple webinars of interest coming up. One today at 1 p.m., that's the Beginner's Guide to Using Portfolio Manager for Benchmarking Law Compliance. One in February that talks about how to use benchmarking to understand your building's performance, and one in March on energy efficiency. They also keep a really comprehensive list of FAQs at the Portfolio Manager site. And then, of course, the DOEE website has a number of great resources, including 2 webinars on how to enroll in automatic reporting and multi-tenant buildings. And that multi-tenant buildings is the one that walks you through using the aggregate meter information from Pepco and Washington Gas. So once DOEE has received all benchmarking reports, they are publicly disclosed on our benchmarking disclosure map and through the Open Data DC database. If you're voluntarily reporting your building before it's required, your data will not be publicly disclosed. Data is only publicly disclosed after a building submits your second annual required report. So we're going to do one more poll here. If you go to that polling panel, the question is, do you plan to start benchmarking your property before the required deadline? And it's a simple yes, no. You just click open up that panel. You'll be able to see it. We'll give you just a few more seconds here. So do you plan to start benchmarking your property before the required deadline? Yes or no? So that's good to know. We're getting a number of yeses. For those who are not yet persuaded, I'll go over a few of the benefits of early reporting. As I mentioned earlier, it's a good way for you and your staff to become accustomed to the process of benchmarking. We're also offering one-on-one benchmarking help provided by DOEE and DC Sustainable Energy Utility to those who take part in voluntary reporting. And we'll also help connect you to our DOEE partners like the DCSCU and others who offer various services and rebate programs to buildings. And finally, it's a good way to jumpstart preparing your building to meet its building energy performance standard. And so we're coming up on the end of the webinar before the question and answer period, but we have one more poll question that will open up. And that is, how can DOEE provide you and your building more help, and you can select all that apply. So again, go to that polling panel if you could, and see there we ask whether or not there's additional webinars. Perhaps you're looking for more information on our benchmarking website. If you're interested in virtual office hours, you can select that. Perhaps it's one-on-one benchmarking assistance. And if you select other, if you don't mind chatting at us through the Q&A box, you can let us know if you're not seeing something there that you think would be helpful, but you have an idea of something else, go ahead and let us know what you think that is. We really appreciate any feedback. Just a few more seconds before I'll close the poll. Great, thank you all. Since it looks like one-on-one benchmarking assistance was a popular option, which is good, because that's something we're already planning on offering. And for those that selected virtual office hours, that's something we'll definitely look into, and we'll advertise those as the opportunities come about. Thank you all for answering that. As some of you may know, DOE has an active benchmarking help center. So if you have any questions regarding your benchmarking report, please contact us by email, and we'll work with you to answer your questions. You can reach us at info.benchmark@dc.gov, and we also have a link to our address or website there. So that concludes the demonstration and informational part of the webinar. We will use the remaining 10 minutes that we have to take questions. So please feel free to type your questions through the Q&A WebEx feature, and we'll go through them one by one. And thanks again, everyone, for bearing with us as we dealt with the technical difficulties. So go ahead and put some questions in the question and answer panel if you have. Great, and so it looks like Joanna was able to start answering some questions as they came up throughout the presentation. And Joanna, do you want to go ahead? I'm catching up on what we have here. If you see one that you think we could start to answer, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. So the first one I'm seeing here, submitted by Fred, the first question, are the shifts to 100% renewables and local solar part of DC's benchmarking or BEST requirements? And if so, how will this data be entered? It's a great question. So the renewable energy and local solar requirements are completely separate from benchmarking and BEST requirements. We kind of view the Clean Energy DC plan as being two big buckets, energy efficiency and renewable energy. And while, of course, the two are interconnected in terms of coming into compliance with benchmarking and BEST, we view them as being separate initiatives. And the reason for that is by focusing on energy efficiency and renewables and not conflating the two, we actually believe we're going to be getting more gains in efficiency and renewable. So if you do have on-site renewables at your property, that should be reported as part of your benchmarking report. And there's very specific guidance of how to enter solar meters along with your grid-powered electricity meter. But if you are simply purchasing renewable energy credits, that is not something that is taken into account for your benchmarking data. You can indicate when you enter your electricity meter that you're purchasing green energy, but that's not something that really comes into play for the benchmarking. So good question. And the second question is, what is DC requiring for water usage? Is there a compliance part in BEST? If entered in CCF, must it be changed? So for benchmarking, we do require that you enter all water usage. This is, as part of the benchmarking requirements. We recommend that you enter usage in gallons. However, what is most important to us is that you are consistently entering the same units and entering those units correctly. So if you have been entering in CCF and that's exactly what you're pulling from your DC water bill, as long as you continue to benchmark that way, it will be acceptable. However, because this is promoted at buildings that might be benchmarking for the first time, we recommend starting off with gallons. But again, most importantly, keep your units consistent always. Another question, are the presentation slides available for our review after the session? Yes, this session is being recorded, so the recording and the slides will both be posted to our website and also likely sent out to the participant list of everyone who has joined today. Another question here, how do you share information for your property? As Julia mentioned, we actually hosted an entire webinar on that specific process. It's called Automatic Reporting, and we have both a webinar and a step-by-step guide, both of which are available on our website that we highly recommend you use. Next question, are/can submeters be reported? Yes, so submeters must be reported if they are part of the whole building energy data. So DOEE considers the size of the building to be any structures that share a common energy or water meter. So if there is one central meter that connects multiple structures, and those structures equal to be over 10,000, 25,000, or 50,000 square feet, then it is covered, and all of that energy usage needs to be reported.
Joanna, can I add to that?
Yes.
Yeah, Doug. So for submeters, there's a way in Portfolio Manager that you can indicate. So if you have your, sort of your like master meter that the submeters are feeding off of, if you want to track both, you could benchmark the master meter or whatever that you're pulling the submeters off of, and then you could also add in the submeters, and you can click a button that says "Do not use these in the metrics." So what would happen is only the larger like master meter would get reported to DOEE, and then you could be tracking the submeters on the back end in Portfolio Manager, but they just wouldn't be sort of reported to us. And our staff is happy to help you with that process if needed.
Thanks, Katie.
It's important with submeters that you don't want to like double count. So you don't want to be double counting your energy usage.
Yeah, good clarification. Another question here, when will you cover the connecting to Schneider? Again, that's actually a webinar that we hosted last year in partnership with both Pepco, Washington Gas, and Schneider Electric. So you can go over to our website and view that recording. They help walk through that step-by-step process, and they also, both Washington Gas and Pepco, have great resources as well as guides to walk you through how to connect your Portfolio Manager account with Schneider. I see another question here. Can more than one building be benchmarked under one real property identifier? It's a great question. So there are a few different instances. The simplest one is there is one building with one DC real property unique ID. But there's also an instance where one building can cover multiple real property unique IDs or multiple tax lots. So if your one building is being benchmarked, but it spans over multiple tax lots, you must report all of those tax lots or real property unique identifiers when benchmarking the building. Conversely, there are instances where multiple buildings sit on one shared tax lot. And again, that's okay. Report using the tax lot that your building is on. On our end, we're able to determine how those buildings are split up. And then next, who is legally responsible for submitting this information? Is it an HOA board or management company? All of our benchmarking laws apply directly to the building owner. So at the end of the day, it is the responsibility of the building owner to submit complete and accurate benchmarking data by the reporting deadline. Of course, there are instances where it might be a management company, a third-party consultant, or anything in between that is submitting the data on behalf of the building owner, but it should be known that when it comes to legal responsibility for this requirement, it falls on the building owner. So we are only ever enforcing upon the building owner. So you are able to have someone submit benchmarking data on your behalf, but please note that at the end of the day, it's the building owner's responsibility. There's another question, what if you have multiple buildings on one property? We see that a lot here in DC. They might be known as garden-style apartments. As I mentioned, if those different buildings in a garden-style apartment share at least one common energy or water meter, then you should be benchmarking all of those buildings as one property. So even though you might see 5 different physical structures on your property, in Portfolio Manager's eyes and DOEE's eyes, if they're sharing a common energy or water meter, they would be benchmarked as one singular property, and you would add up the total square footage of each individual structure and have that be your total square footage. And you would also add all of the energy and water usage shared by that set of structures in Portfolio Manager. That looks like a similar question kind of building off of that is, what if two buildings share a common water meter, but one is over 25,000 square feet and one is below? So again, if these two buildings share a water meter, but one is seemingly above the benchmarking law and one is below, you actually would take the combined total square footage. And we're happy to get into the specifics of that question if you want to send us an email with the exact sizes of your buildings, and we can help you determine when they're required to benchmark.
Great. Well, we only have a minute left till 1 p.m., so I think that's all of our time for today. Just a quick reminder that the recording and slides will be posted to our website in the next few days, so you'll have access to the links that are in the slide deck. And for those that didn't get your questions answered, I think we got all of them, but if not, please send us your email address in the Q&A chat or send us an email at info.benchmark@dc.gov, and we will follow up with you. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you for your patience with the technical difficulties, and we look forward to receiving your benchmarking report. Thanks all.